catch us on Twitter. I'm at Niall McGrath4 and at Talkingbrawls, obviously on talkingbrawlsmma.com as well. And Gus Ryan, you can catch Gus at all his work on independent.ie and at Gus Ryan 100 on Twitter. So do hit us up on that. Let's get to the next interview of the day. I caught up with former UFC middleweight champion and ONE FC vice president Rich Frankel to talk about a whole range of issues. So yeah, enjoy the interview, and we'll be back just to touch on a little bit of Bama before we get out of here this week. Cheers.
This is your favorite, the California Kid, and you're listening to Talkingbrawls.
Delighted to welcome on the Talkingbrawlsmma.com podcast, ONE Championship vice president, former UFC middleweight champion, Rich Franklin. Rich, how are you, my friend? I believe you're over in Singapore.
I am in Singapore. I'm doing great, man. I've been over here a couple weeks, tackling a lot of things with the company over here, and I'll be heading back to the States real soon.
Yeah, but what's it like? Obviously, you're just over a year now into the job of VP of ONE Championship. What are the day-to-day activities for you?
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm one of the few employees that the company has that is not Singapore or Asia-based, for that matter. So I think originally when they hired me, a big portion of the job that they wanted me to do was just ambassador work for the brand. But as an athlete and a recognizable face in MMA, most people that follow my career know that I'm college educated, and so I bring more to the table than just that. So if I had to give you a job description in a concise manner, I really couldn't. I do everything from, like, when we go into a new territory, sometimes I'll go into the territory, I'll speak to like a sports ministry in the territory that we went to. We were just recently in Myanmar. I met with the sports ministry before we went to Myanmar. I did seminars on MMA, introducing the sport to the sports ministry as well as to some of the fighters. They're helping not just build the fighter base of mixed martial arts fighters in Asia, but also helping build the fan base as well. And so I do stuff like that. I do some stuff on the production side, and I do a little bit on business development when we're going into new territories, looking at making the connections that we need to make going into those territories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's probably some miscellaneous stuff that I'm missing in there, but basically it's just, as I've been with the company for a year now, and there are a lot of things I'm capable of doing and a lot of needs that the company has. And as the company grows, the focus that they're pushing me into becomes more and more focused. So, we'll see it. I think the landscape of my job here with ONE Championship will be quite different if we were doing this interview a year from now.
How big is the explosion been in Asia, especially in that region? We have obviously Singapore, Malaysia, Myanmar, as you mentioned there. Is it as big as the hype is getting in the region with ONE Championship?
It is. You have to look, like, if you look at just one of our regions, take Indonesia, for example. Yeah. We have a show in Jakarta later this year. But Indonesia, like, people don't realize that the population of Indonesia is about the same size as the population of the United States. Yeah, and that's huge. Just one country in this region. It's one of our main staples. So, basically, like, the idea for us is that we're going into a country like Indonesia, which is a fairly big country, but we'll also we're based out of Singapore. That's a smaller country. We'll go into a country like Cambodia, which we've done last year. We're doing again this year. We did Myanmar recently. And so little by little, we're chipping away at not just, when people think of Asia, they think of China because it's such a big territory. But we're also in China. We did our first show in China last year, and then we've had several shows in China this year and several more before the end of the year. And so when people think of Asia, they think of just China, but there's so much more to Asia than just China. And little by little, we're chipping away at all these other regions and basically just building our brand there. And so while we're growing territory to territory, also the sport of mixed martial arts is growing within each of those territories. So it's creating an exponential growth for the company itself.
Definitely. And, we look at martial arts in Asia, especially, it's a way of life for a lot of people. It's their number one thing. Thailand, the kids be kickboxing and all that, doing Muay Thai. How good is the talent in Asia? Because obviously you're an experienced guy. You've been a UFC world champion. How many stars can we get out of that region?
Well, listen, the talent, obviously, when you go to a place like Thailand, the talent in a place like Thailand for Thai boxing is just ridiculous. Yeah. I remember the first time that I came over to Singapore, and I was working with a Lumpini Thai champion by the name of Arona Warpechpoon. And that guy, we sparred, and he's just, he's a 135-pound guy. And this guy, like, for every time I attempted to kick him and missed, I got kicked 5 times in return. And it's just the discrepancy in just the stand-up game is that much. But what people don't realize is that these people, or like a guy like Arono has been doing Muay Thai ever since he was a young kid, like since he was I don't know, probably 5-7 years old. He probably had his first professional fight by the time he was 12. And so they have a natural propensity towards combative sports. And so the learning curve over here is real fast. Now, when you take MMA in general, like, yeah, they're a bit behind the United States because this is a newer sport in Asia than it is in the U.S. So when you look at things like they are behind the curve a little bit. But what I see from show to show in one championship is that every time we put on a show, you just see the talent like exponentially grow in their skill level that much faster. And so this is something that's going to take off. I think that the development of MMA in Asia is going to be much faster than it was in the United States. You look at one championship as an organization, for example. In 2011, we only did one show, and that was the first year that we were in business. But this is our 4th year in business, and by the end of this year, we'll probably net out somewhere around 18 shows. Right. And so each year we've put on more and more shows, and so you can see how fast as an organization we're growing as well.
Let's look at, obviously, Rich, the crowd and to sell tickets. One is I think it's the largest owned media property in Asia. How impressive is the plan? And, is that expansion really going to go as strong as it's been going at the moment?
Absolutely. Listen, each show that we're doing is already all the shows that we do. We're already profitable as a company. Yeah. And so when we go into a region, not only are we like I said before, like chipping away, like we go into a region like Indonesia and we pick up fans in Indonesia, and we go into a region like Cambodia and we're establishing a brand in Cambodia and Myanmar. Not only are we expanding like region to region to region, but at the same time, MMA is also growing in each of those regions. And so the growth pattern for this sport and for our company is it's just going to excel. When you're looking, like I used Indonesia as an example before, when you look at a company like Indonesia and you see the possibility of something like that there, and you mentioned like media rights, like the fact that we're a media company and we're gonna the direct access that we have, not just like we have like for example, we have media deals with like a Fox Sports over here in Asia, but we also have local partners within each region itself. So it's just the trajectory that we have. Like, this huge. The company trajectory is huge. It's the future for this. Just in sheer numbers alone, when you look at the numbers of Asia compared to like the West, just in sheer numbers alone, the growth pattern for this company is
massive.
The ceiling for it is something that you wouldn't even be able to predict.
Is there much education needed for the audience and the consumer of mixed martial arts in Asia?
There is. There is an education level here. It's different. It's a different kind of education than maybe like we did in the United States, for example. Because in the U.S. There is no, or even Europe for that matter, there is no real, like, it's not like there's a martial art tied to the culture, like in Ireland, or tied to the culture in the United States. I guess the best thing that you could come up with for the U.S. is maybe wrestling or boxing. Those are about the two best examples. But when you go into a country here, like if you go into Thailand, like, and we spoke about Muay Thai earlier, that like Muay Thai has been tied to that culture since the beginning of that culture. Like it's just part of the culture since the beginning of that nation. And each country that you go to, when you go into Myanmar, they do Letway boxing, and Letway boxing is basically, it's for the listeners that aren't familiar with that art, it's very similar to Muay Thai boxing. Or when you go into Cambodia, they do Khmer boxing. And Khmer boxing, once again, they're all similar arts. The difference is that here, like in Thailand, Muay Thai is religion to those people. Like it's part of the culture. And so going into a place like that, you're basically describing or like helping them understand how Muay Thai is a piece of MMA. And the rule systems are so different for each of these martial arts that just something is foreign. Like when I was in Myanmar, for example, the Burmese fighters there, they don't wear gloves. So something like wearing gloves in an MMA event is a very foreign concept to them. Like something as basic as that could be foreign. So yeah, there isn't an education level. It's just a different type of education. And the education that you would do in a country like China or Taiwan may be different than the education that you would do in a country like Cambodia.
Yeah, I obviously think combat sports are, for a mainstream audience and even on television, there's no real watershed times, and you can show martial arts on TV in Asia at an earlier time than you could here, on this side of the planet. You mentioned judging criteria there, especially with ONE FC, the judging criteria. Would you like to see the unified mixed martial arts rules maybe? Especially with the judges taking that set of rules and scoring of bouts into the UFC.
Absolutely, I think honestly, if we used our judging criteria, there are a couple fights in my career that I definitely would have won. But yeah, and for the listeners that aren't familiar, ONE Championship, we don't judge on a round by round basis.
Exactly. Yeah.
We judge the fight in its entirety. And we have a judging criteria that is based on parameters. Like we look at aggression and we look at takedown defense and ground control and effective striking and then damage and then, near knockouts and submissions. And so you're based on these criteria. And the way the criteria is set up is it's set up to basically look at a fighter come out and execute a game plan from start to finish and try to finish the fight. And if in the event you're unable to finish the fight before time expires, then you look at that criteria and you judge the fight on its entirety. So there is no ability to like steal a round in the last 30 seconds of a round and suddenly you stole that round and now you're down 10-9 on the scorecards because you're using a 10-point must system. And so for me, when I look at this judging criteria, like I believe that the global rule set has a far superior judging criteria than the unified rules.
Yeah, but just going obviously the fight last weekend, the UFC with Michael Johnson and Dariush, and it was an absolutely crazy decision for me, and I do think the global scoring system would be better. Another question I want to ask you, obviously with ONE FC, and I spoke to Victor about this as well. The Asian people seem to invest in the English Premier League, the PGA Tour. That's where their real heroes are. They aren't home-based in their regions. Do you think there's a potential for ONE Championship to create Asian stars and heroes to be born in the region for the people to really support and get behind?
That you're absolutely right about that. Look, when you look at the landscape of how people are exposed to media, the landscape originally was that when you were a kid and when your favorite TV show was on at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, you had to watch that show at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Well, now when your favorite TV show is on at 8 a.m., you just DVR it. Well, or anymore, you can just go to a provider like Netflix, and you can just watch the media whenever you want it. And that's how things are changing. And so really this business, it's all about media and it's all about media rights. Yeah. And for us, we are the only media property company. Like we're the only sports media company that is Asian based, Asian owned, and operates out of Asia. And many of our champions are Asian champions. So yeah, we are basically the only sports media property that's not imported. And that's going to be, I believe that's going to be a key factor for us in the future for people watching these fights. The fights. Sports is one of the few things in this world, like the example I used about your favorite TV show on Saturday morning. Yeah. Live sports is one of the few things in this world that people will actually tune into when the program starts. I think the last time I actually sat down in front of a television to watch something at the time that it was designated to start was last season during American football, watching an American football game on Monday night. That's probably the last time I actually literally sat down in front of a television. And so live sport has that ability with television, but overall, what we're creating is that freedom as well, and the fact that we're creating these local heroes here, in the sense that like I said, the media this is an Asian based company and Asian owned company, and we will create local heroes, and that all once again relates back to the sheer numbers of the growth pattern here in Asia.
I think it's sort of hard for us to gauge, obviously being on this side of the pond, how big one championship is. You know, it's bigger than the UFC in lots of parts of Asia. Isn't that correct? Popularity basis.
It is. Yeah, it is. It is. It's more recognized than the UFC in some parts of Asia at this point in time, and some territories that I haven't personally been to yet.
Yeah.
I don't go to all of the shows that One Championship puts on because I'm still, I'm based in the States, so I spend a little less than 50% of my time on this side of the pond, so to speak.
Yeah. And you look, and we mentioned heroes, and I'm going to bring in this name to you, CM Punk, the UFC. I want to get your opinion on this. The UFC have brought in a guy that's obviously, he's a former pro wrestler. He's had no real collegiate experience in wrestling, or he doesn't have a real jiu-jitsu background. He has no martial arts background, so to speak. Do you think that's the right move, from a world mixed martial arts level to give, send out the right signals to the world?
Well, I'll say this much: I don't know CM Punk personally, and I don't like to pass judgment on people or talk trash about people, because it's easy for somebody like me to say, hell no, he doesn't deserve that kind of stuff. But realistically, look at my history. I was a high school math teacher. I came out of a karate background. I didn't wrestle in college. I don't have any D1 NC2A championships. I wasn't a champion kickboxer in any kind of organization. I just came out of nowhere, and through hard work and building my skill level, was able to win a world championship in MMA. So, in a sense, when I hear you describe a guy, when you describe CM Punk, it's not too much different than me. Now, I don't know. I had a natural skill level. I think that for me, I had a good propensity towards learning martial arts. My learning curve in martial arts was just exponential, whereas many people are linear. And so a guy like CM Punk may be like that, and it may be a great diamond in the rough, so to speak, and somebody that could have a career. My gut tells me that when you look at a guy like that, who's already he's not a spring chicken. He's not a 21-year-old athlete. So does that up the difficulty level on that? Absolutely. And so we'll see what is to come out of it. But I don't discount people before they've actually had a chance to prove themselves. And if nothing else, it was at least a good media stunt.
Definitely, yeah.
All around.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. We look at one championship in the UFC, and obviously I know you still have one fight left in your UFC deal. Is there potential for the UFC and one championship to forge a relationship in the future? Could you see that happening?
I wouldn't look. I've learned this much in life: never say never.
Yeah.
But they're two separate organizations, and that would be like asking a question like, is there a chance for Coke and Pepsi to forge a relationship? Yeah. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? No. Because they're just, to forge a relationship. It's not, if you wanted to take our welterweight champ versus their welterweight champ, there are a lot of it's these processes are much more complex than just saying hey, let's put this fight together and it'll work out.
And another thing I want to ask you about while we're on the subject of we're obviously talking about fighters a lot and the two organizations. What do you feel about the UFC's deal with Reebok? Is that something that one championship, obviously with the huge media property that you guys have, might look at down the line forging a relationship with a major clothing brand for your athletes?
Yeah, if the numbers on something like that were to make sense, then yeah, obviously it would. That's not something that we would. Yeah, I mean, for sure we would pursue something like that, but it would have to make sense. And obviously, for somebody like myself, I'm on both sides of the coin now. I work as an athlete, or worked as an athlete for one organization. I'm still contracted as an athlete for that organization, have one fight left, and then I work as an executive for the other. So when you the UFC's been in a lot of heat over this Reebok deal, and I can see it from both sides. I can see as an athlete how that particular deal is not or may not be beneficial for many of the athletes, but I can also see it as an executive of how it's very beneficial to the organization as a whole. And I don't know the ins and outs of that deal, obviously, but with the proper structure, something like that could be quite beneficial to both parties. And I think that maybe given the first swing at something like that, the UFC is trying to do their best, with that kind of thing, making sure that the athletes benefit from it as well. So as an organization, one championship would definitely would definitely be interested in doing something like that. And we talk with some major brands that, some Asian-based major brands. We also have brands that we speak with in the U.S. as well that are interested in growing their brand in Asia.
You've one fight left on your UFC contract. Will you get to know the ins and outs of that Reebok deal? Will we be seeing Rich Franklin back in the octagon?
Look, when I the thing is, I really don't know what the next 6 months of my life is going to look like. Earlier in the conversation, I told you I spend almost 50% of my time here in Asia, and that does wreak a little bit of havoc on my training schedule. I maintain a normal training schedule. I'm always in good shape. Like, if anybody that follows me on Twitter, they see my posts and stuff like that, and the kind of things that I'm doing. So I never fall out of shape or anything. But there's a big difference between getting ready for a fight and just training for, I wouldn't call it recreation, but it's different when you're not getting ready for a fight. And I have a lot of responsibilities with one championship. So I do have that last fight on my contract with the UFC. It was my intention to fulfill my contract, but I would before I actually began scheduling a fight with them, I'd have to really sit down with the organization here that I'm working for,
of course,
and see how that would affect the responsibilities I have with my job here.
You obviously have a very good relationship still with Dana White. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I don't have a bad relationship, and there hasn't been a ton of communication between myself and the UFC since I took my job with one championship. So I don't want to say I left on good terms because I never technically left, but no, I've always had a good relationship with the UFC, and when I took my job with one championship, they were supportive of me working here. It wasn't like there was any bad blood because I was working for another organization.
Awesome. I just want to get your opinion on, obviously, us being Irish and this being an Irish show. What's your opinion on Conor McGregor? I know Aldo obviously pulled out of the fight at UFC 189. It's been rescheduled yesterday for the 12th of December at UFC 194. I know you're a guy who's broken your rib and torn cartilage, I think, before on your rib. Do you think this fight's definitely going to go ahead at UFC 194?
I don't see why it wouldn't. Especially at this point. Look, as far as Conor goes, like, he's a showman. He's a talented athlete. So I by going straight to saying like he's a showman, I don't want to discount the fact that I respect him as a fighter. But on top of being a great athlete, like he understands like marketability and all that kind of stuff as well. He understands how to make a fight, how to make people interested in a fight. That's why people were interested in him in the Jose Aldo fight. And I think because of his efforts, when Chad stepped in for the fight, like, it really didn't hurt the fight that much because people were really interested to see if he was going to live up to a lot of the things that he was saying, because it's not like the opponent really got any easier for him. So considering that there was a delay there, it's just that all that does is put that much more pressure into making this particular fight happen. The fans are going to want to see it. So I do believe that the fight will happen in December. It's ribs and cartilage and stuff like that. Like, it's not like you can do anything for that stuff. Like, whether you break a rib or tear cartilage, they feel the same. Like, you cough, sneeze, laugh too hard, and you're in pain. I've been in both of those situations, and so it's just one of those things where you just kind of have to leave it alone, and it'll heal on its own. And don't take too many deep breaths or cough. And so it shouldn't take that long. Like, that's a reasonable time frame by December that Jose should be able to return.
And mentioning personalities and fighters, Conor McGregor, who are we going to look out for in ONE FC? Obviously, we have the likes of Vera, established names like Vera Askren, Bibiana, Oki. Is there a name for you that's really going to stick out and stand out in Asia over the next coming couple of years?
I don't know. I don't know. Because I'm a huge Aoki fan. I don't see anybody beating Viviano anytime soon unless he just has a bad day. I'm really interested in like the Ben Askren Luis Santos rematch because the initial fight that they had in Manila was a big letdown for us with the eye poke, and Luis was looking really good in that fight. Up to that point in time, Askren had been basically unstoppable with his wrestling, and Luis came out with a good start. Now I think he was beginning to lose steam at the time of the eye poke, but that's all hearsay. But no, as far as the Asian stars go, I mean, you look at like like we had our strawweight champ, our first strawweight champ, and we're like one championship has a male strawweight champ, which is just a crazy concept because you can do that in Asia. But Thai guy, Dej Wrong Sor Sirichok is his name. We just call him Crew Wrong. and I think he's going to sit on that championship for a while. Not just because he's strawweight, because there are plenty of strawweights here, but because he's a super talented Thai guy. And he's a guy like that to watch. Like when you asked me that question before about the talent here in Asia, he's the perfect guy to watch. Like as a Muay Thai champ, a well decorated Muay Thai champ in Thailand, to see what his learning curve is like for things like wrestling and his jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. He's had some submission victories, and his wrestling is actually quite nice, especially his defensive wrestling, because they're so difficult to take down. And I think like watching a guy like that, like especially if we end up going to a territory like Thailand, you're going to see somebody like that just grow in popularity.
Yeah, that'll be absolutely awesome. So just one final one for you, Rich. Obviously, we're coming up towards the end of the year and the last quarter of the year. So, what's the next 6-12 months like for you? What's the plans?
Once I leave here, I go back home and I have my daily duties that I do for one championship and everything. But I maintain my training schedule, and then of course I'll be back on this side of the planet. We have several shows we're doing in November, so I'll be here for the November shows, and I'll also I'll head back home, but I'll be back for the December shows that we're doing as well, because we have a couple shows in December. And so between what I'm doing for one championship and training, man, that's truly my life. If I'm not doing some recreational extreme sport, then I'm spending my days in the gym, working with some of my training partners and local guys that are trying to make their living fighting, and my duties with one championship. And that's pretty much the life of Rich Franklin. It's a simple equation.
Awesome stuff. I'm really looking forward to seeing how one championship progress in the coming years. It's a really, really exciting time, I feel, from talking to yourself and Victor over the last couple of weeks about the expansion and the growth of the sport. And listen, it's been an absolute honour to have you on the show, and I really do appreciate the time.
Hey, the pleasure's mine. It was a great interview, man. I had a lot of fun, so we'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely, my friend. Really appreciate it.